Elijah should have lived.
It's really concerning.
Unsettled by the results of an independent report on Elijah McClain's death.
Very disturbed by the information that is contained in this report.
Tonight, Aurora City leaders say it is time to take action.
What we need is a public safety system and not a police system.
Using force within seconds, independent investigators question officers' actions on the night Elijah McClain was detained.
I have a right to stop you because you're being suspicious.
The investigation that followed described as flawed.
They couldn't hide anymore from the truth.
The results? Vindication for McClain's family and the supporters who marched, rallied, and demanded change in Aurora.
We're going to get some justice for Elijah McClain.
The report also casting fresh scrutiny on a controversial drug used by paramedics that night.
Our policies around the use of ketamine are inadequate to protect safety.
18 months after his death, the family of Elijah McClain is finally getting the clarity they so badly wanted. An independent report released today shows what so many thought. Aurora police had no legal basis to stop or restrain the 23-year-old back in August of 2019.
And the report also questions the choices made by EMS that night when McClain was injected with the sedative ketamine and with far more than what is recommended for his size and weight. And as you know, he died a few days later.
Good evening and welcome to Denver7 News at 10. I'm Ann Trujillo.
And I'm Shannon Ogden. Thank you for joining us tonight. Denver7's Sloan Dickey is live with the story in Aurora. And Sloan, the 150-plus page report presented to City Council tonight. A lot of members are expressing deep concerns with their findings.
Yeah, one city council member even called that report disturbing, and she said that change must now come to the Aurora Police Department. We have to be clear, this investigation was not into whether charges should be brought against specific officers involved in the death of Elijah McClain. However, this report was looking into policies and training and the use of force by the Aurora Police Department.
People believe that the African-American community, the Black community, has been crying wolf.
Aurora community leader Omar Montgomery says it's tragic that it took a young man's death to prompt systematic change.
You're being suspicious.
But he says that change must now happen.
I think the Aurora Police Department knew that these changes would have to come.
Give us some more units. We're fighting them.
Investigators say the death of Elijah McClain in August of 2019 could have been prevented. A comprehensive report found that officers had no legal basis to stop McClain, put their hands on him, or use a carotid hold. The report says officers failed to identify a crime had been, was being, or was about to be committed. That report was presented to Aurora City Council on Monday night.
The evidence available does not provide a justification for the near constant use of very painful force techniques.
The report found numerous instances of rushed and excessive force, a breakdown of communication with paramedics, and a failure of the department to properly investigate the incident.
My immediate reaction is just to be very disturbed by the information that is contained in this report.
Aurora City Councilwoman Allison Coombs is now questioning the use of ketamine.
I do think that it corroborates a lot of the concerns that community members and community leaders have had.
The report found EMS overestimated McClain's weight by as little as 40 pounds and as much as 80 pounds before administering a dose of ketamine.
We need to be looking at those as sources of de-escalation, not drugging citizens for appearing uncooperative.
The city has temporarily banned the use of ketamine, but Councilwoman Coombs wants it gone for good.
I don't think that we should take an approach that sedatives are de-escalation.
The report outlines numerous recommendations for the department, including a thorough review of its use of force policy, the implementation of body cameras for all EMS responders, and an overhaul of how APD handles investigations into its own officers.
This is a time to make it happen. I think we have the resources in place and the right people to make it happen. We just need to make sure we have the will to move forward.
A step to rebuilding community trust, starting with change.
We need public safety officers who treat everyone as a human being, and then from there, we can start to begin community trust.
Now, because tonight's meeting ran long, there was no opportunity for council members to ask questions of those investigators. That's important for reforming future policy. So the mayor has set another meeting in the future so that council members might be able to ask those questions. There's also been a press conference set for tomorrow at 10:30 in the morning. That will be with the police chief and the fire chief here in Aurora. They will be responding to this investigation as well. And you can count on our live coverage right here on Denver 7. Shannon.
All right, Sloan Dickey tonight. Thank you, Sloan. And for McLean's family, this report feels like a vindication. They say it highlights that Elijah did nothing to prompt such a forceful response from police.
It matters that he can no longer be labeled a suspect. I just bursted out in tears because it felt like such a relief to hear those words that exonerated my son.
I hope he holds them accountable because they have problems.
And in a statement, Shanine McLean said her son's death left an enormous void in the lives of the many people who loved him. She's also calling for criminal charges now against anyone responsible for her son's death.
So as for the 3 officers involved in the McLean case, they were never charged for their actions. One officer was fired, but not for his involvement in the incident, rather a photo scandal that later emerged. The other 2 officers still work for the police department, and they are now in different roles. The McLean family is now suing the city of Aurora. And as for holding those officers and emergency crews accountable, there are several other active investigations. The state has opened a grand jury investigation to see if criminal charges are warranted. And the U.S. Department of Justice is looking at whether Elijah McLean's civil rights were violated. You can count on us to stay on top of every development in all of these investigations and the policy changes that could come in Aurora.
Moments like this are really not uncommon in Denver. That is Denver Public School Board member Tay Anderson on the ground at a protest against a homeless camp sweep back in July.
The mayor who thinks he can just sick his dogs on his own people.
And that is Denver City Councilwoman Candy Sidibaka facing off with police at another homeless camp sweep in September. Now, how the city treats homeless neighbors is a source of real tension between Mayor Hancock and some other city leaders. And now the mayor is making a change. He is asking that routine calls at homeless camps go through the city's 311 helpline instead of first sending police officers. The idea is to connect people with the services they need without involving law enforcement. There's no change plan to how the city will handle those large sweeps and cleanups at the homeless camps.
And Boulder police are expanding a program that pairs behavioral health experts with police responding to calls where mental health is a concern. And the idea is to have an expert on hand who can connect with someone in crisis and direct them to the help they need. The city hired 4 full-time licensed clinicians, and they will be available to go out on calls with officers every day of the week.
Tonight, investigators are digging through cockpit voice recordings after an explosion knocked out this airplane engine Saturday, scattered chunks of metal all over Broomfield. Look at that. Investigators say early examination show signs of metal fatigue on one of the fan blades. They plan to do a closer inspection with the engine maker. And also, without explanation, they said they found small pieces of fan blade from this airplane roughly 2,000 miles away in Bloomfield, Connecticut. Boeing is recommending that airlines ground some of its 777 jets during this investigation.
Well, there is some good news for people living in Broomfield. With coronavirus case numbers improving, that county is moving from level yellow to blue and easing some restrictions. So last call, for example, will move from 11 p.m. to midnight, and schools, colleges, and universities are encouraged to get back to in-person classes. The 50% capacity cap stays in place for restaurants, gyms, and offices.
And tonight, flags at the White House are at half-staff as our nation marks a somber milestone in this pandemic. 500,000 Americans now killed by that virus. And even as we mourn those we have lost, there is some good news tonight. The CDC says across the nation, the number of new cases dropped for a 5th week in a row.
9-month-old Gianna Rosales had so much life to live. She died, though, back in August. And a newly released autopsy report shows she died from blunt force injuries to the head. Well, Gianna's father, Anthony Rosales, is frustrated. He says his little girl was in the care of her mother before she passed away. And in the weeks before her death, he raised concerns about his daughter's safety, even opening a case with the Jefferson County Department of Human Services. But he says the system failed to act fast enough, and now 6 months later, still no arrests and no answers.
The system could have made sure my daughter was okay. I want someone to be locked up for it. I want justice for my daughter.
Lakewood police tell Denver7 they attempted 4 welfare checks after Rosales filed police reports back in July. That was a month before Gianna's death. But they say the mother wasn't home. Now, the medical examiner didn't pinpoint an exact cause of death, only calling it undetermined because it is just not clear how Gianna suffered these injuries.
And it's been an emotional 12 months, wouldn't you say? And the stress, the sadness, the worry, the fear, the uncertainty, the isolation. It might seem an odd question, but let me ask you something. Where do you go to cry? So in those times, life just gets to be too much. Do you have a place you go just to let it all out? And credit where credit's due here. I was reading a story in the Boston Globe discussing this as we come up on a full year of the pandemic, and it got me wondering where Coloradans go to cry. Where are the best spots? And in front of the TV after a Broncos game is not what I'm talking about here. Is there a, I don't know, a rock you sit on along the South Platte, or maybe a lookout area up in the mountains, maybe an isolated trail where you go, you can just let it all out. So let us know the best spots to cry. We're going to put together a list of responses. We're going to share them. The email address is 360@thedenverchannel.com.
It's almost like the market is drunk.
Metro homes staggering toward even higher prices.
If something you like goes on the market, you have to be ready to act on it immediately.
It was a shocking market to enter.
So is it buyer beware because the bubble could burst? Or will your investment pay off in the long run? We're taking a 360 look at the hot housing market.
Not too bad in the 60s today, close to 60 again tomorrow, but after that comes snow.